Hey guys, this is a video on how to make a pet and or mount in uMMORPG. So in this one, we're using 179 and we're using, well, it works in 2018.4 and 2018.3.6. Um, I've tried them out before. There's really not too much of a difference. So in here, we have our mount in Blender. I'm going to hit the one on the number pad and it shows the forward. This is the direction the mount, the seat, and the player will go. Now up here I put a seat so that they can ride up high. So you can see the Z-axis, it's a little bit different in Blender. In Unity it goes this way, it goes forward. So you see here everything's animated and working just fine. We're going to jump over here and we're first going to make a empty object because this is how you start making prefabs. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up here, grab the stun overlay, and I'm going to paste it here. Put this in here because we're going to need two of them. I'll actually name one now. Great. The one thing I don't like is sometimes my computer will slow down. I can't see in the dark. So we have these two items here. Then we're going to go down to the file. I pulled it from Blender into the folder here. You can just show and explore, then dragging copy. So we're going to pull this whole file into this right here. And you'll see here we have the armature, which is basically the bones in a rig, and the golem. So I also want to point out that on the hip, you're going to need to make a component called a collider. Non 2D, so make sure you don't select anything 2D. I'm going to close this up real quick. And then we're going to look at our resources. Now, just to note, anything that's a prefab we can keep up here, that's just fine. Or down here, that's okay. But most of the things we'll need are resources, so they will either belong under the resource banner in any of these folders, or if they're skills, they can only go in these folders and below. So here, we're going to drag this last pet, because I'm hoping this to last one I do. This is like the fourth or fifth tutorial by now today. And under here, because things were made a little differently, I'm actually going to go look at something. I'm going to test something out so I can actually get a good idea as to what sizes are like. So I'm going to tap this. Actually, it's already here. It's way under the world. Alright, so I have a good idea as to what this sizing is. So that's just fine. Actually, maybe I'll scale it a little bit. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, so now we need to populate this list, and that will mean we're going to add a few things. First off, we're going to make sure that we have a copy of a controller. So what I did was I made a controller based off the UMA monsters. So this controller is already preset. I'm going to copy another one. Oh man, I don't even want to do that. So we're going to go down here. Name that last spec controller. Then we're going to go up here, open up the prefab. We're going to start adding our components. The first thing we're going to do is add a collider. But we're going to need to add it on the hip here. That seems to be a very popular place. So we have a collider added onto the hip. And the components we're also going to start adding would be the animator. From here, we'll type in last. And here we go. The avatar was already made when we pulled it from Unity. So we're just going to use what was ever with the file here. And just some notes here, old notes. Have your audio source. I don't have all the audio prepared. Just making some changes to whatever I have. And work identity. Yeah, the network prox. Make sure it's the grid checker. After that, the nav mesh agent. So we're going to drop this quality down to none. You don't want to eat up any bandwidth, I believe, or I forgot what it was exactly. But next up, we're going to add which one will we add next? Rigid body. You can make any of these changes. I don't think that really changed much. Enter none. Yep. Collision discrete. Then we're going to add the pet. Now, I think I had some issues adding the pet and mount together. So for now, we're just going to do the pet. The mount will literally just take a few moments. And I'll teach you how. Oh, that doesn't want to show. This one we're going to drag manually. And we don't currently have an audio source. We're going to pump the damage up. Also add on quite a bit of defense. I'll tell you one trick. Sometimes you have to go into prefab mode, and a lot of these options will pop right up. So we're going to make 2 skills. First skill we're going to make is a regular damage skill. That's our default attack. And we're going to make a special attack. For the default, which should be our first attack on this object, we're going to make it all right. So these things aren't under skills. So we're going to make a folder. And we're going to move these things in here. So going back up here, we're going to add in our new attacks. You can mess with these however you want. But these settings work for me. Lastly, we'll add the network name. And everything seems to be in order right now. So we're going to grab this prefab. I'm just going to put it here for now. Actually, let's throw that down here for good measure. All right. So from here, we can basically remove this from the world since we no longer need it. Now we have a perfectly working prefab. Let's also jump in here and fill out whatever is missing. It's still not popping up. Here we go. All right. So now that everything's set here, we can move on to the animations. Now this is the original file, the summon golem. So in here, you're going to see something called default take. That's your animation file. And right now, it's not here because it's already been sectioned up. And in order to do that, you're first going to need to come up to Model and Rig. You can leave it on generic if it's not. So since it's not a humanoid, we're going to move over to Animation, which put import animation. These things you can mess with at your own leisure. So from here, we're going to add a text. So to add a text, first, we're going to make sure we have our idle, walk, and other things. So you'll hit this plus, and from add to list, let's say, let's do this. That means we'll write in whatever we want here. I prefer to type in the name of the pet or mount or whatever. And we have an animation file in Blender. So I wrote down the the stops and starts. So I can pretty much put the start and endings in here and loop them if I need to, especially if you're doing an idle. For an idle animation, for a walk-in animation, anything that needs to be relooped, definitely make sure you have this checked off. So you can take your time and fill that out here. And in the meantime, we're going to go down to hit apply. that sections off anything. So if you make something, um, you also have the source where you can set it from, because sometimes you can have different animation clips inside one file. So that's something to be aware of. Now, I don't need to mess with it, so I'm going to click out since everything is just fine down here. So going back to the prefab, we have the controller set. We're going to jump to the controller and we're going to set up the animations. Now, in Blender, it's 25 frames per 1 second. So you can set that how you like. So for now, we're going to edit these things here. I'm going to call this these need to be named after the attacks in here exactly. So I need to make sure that P is capitalized. The last thing you want to do is have two attacks with the same name, because it'll give you a ridiculous error, and sometimes you'll be running around trying to chase this thing. And it'll just give you the biggest headache in the world. I don't have a dead, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And we're going to move on. But before we move on, just want to point out something about animations. Animations are a little different between different things. You can set anything the way you want to. But in here, I prefer to make an exit. So we're going to click each one and highlight a transition to the exit. First one, we're going to add the walk. Second, we're going to add the auto attack. Now, one thing is you got to keep your auto attacks timers low. So that way they can the system can kind of figure out, all right, well, this is an auto attack, or keep it as a first one. It's one of the two that kind of gives it the hint, or else sometimes you'll run into issues where it just does wonky things. Also, these pets, I believe, well, actually, I haven't checked to see if they have any on hits, because if they do have an on hit, that would be pretty great for making multi-hit attacks. But I know that for regular players, we don't have that option. There might be an option using projectiles, but I could be wrong. I'll check on that sometime. So the first thing is, actually, let's do this. It'll be easier to see. First thing is we have our ends. So idle on end, you want to make sure that it's not doing anything else but moving. So we're going to add on our two attacks here. I'm going to make them false. So idle, nothing else is going on. For the run, we have two things. Our end, we're going to make sure ain't nothing else messing around with our run. So we don't have a run and attack. So this is, we're going to set it up. First, there we go. We're going to make sure that nothing else is running with us. So that means there's no pets attacks going on while we're running. There's no special attacks going on. We're not dead while we're running. Unless you want to transition into that, you could transition some weird slide into your death, but that's up to you. They're basically going to do the same thing for other things. While casting is, it can be, it's something you would want to keep on for attacks, especially if your attacks use casts. So we're going to end our conditionals by saying, all right, well, this attack we're doing, it's true, we're about to end it. It's like we're admitting that we're done here. This is a problem that people run into, especially with animations, so I just want to point that out. On these things, you don't need, if you have your animations all set, you don't need a fixed duration, so you could turn them all off. And you can also change their transition times. Like, I'm going to zero these out, for example. I don't really need to transition to anything unless it's a stop. So let me actually put that at 0.1. So the duration zeroed out. I mean, this is something you could do if you want to. I'm just going to make them 0 or make them low. You can also do that down here. So we're also going to move on to adding pet items. So we're going to make the pets item. We're going to make the pet item. Yeah, let's go with that. Now to make sure it shows up on the shop, we're going to add some flavor stuff. Gonna give it that just for that clip. Actually, no. Make it cheap, because if it dies, then you gotta go pay to get it revived. And we're also gonna make a mount while we're here. So we're gonna make a mount item. Since we have that here, we're gonna do something called a variant. So we're gonna create a prefab variant, and we're gonna name this one at the end mounts. Then we're gonna go in and we're gonna shrink these so it's easy to see. We're going to basically get rid of the pet option and replace it with the mount option. Now maybe I just had bad luck with it so far, but I was unable to properly get the mount and pet together. So because I was unable to get the mount and pet together, I'm going to do this. Oh goodness. Well, it's a mount. Doesn't need any healing pop-ups. Doesn't need any damage either. Doesn't necessarily need this either, but just in case. The seat position, very important. can see position as before. It's going to be right up here. So we're going to be sitting right on top of the head. So I think everything's pretty much done here. Nope. Make sure you add, where is it? Make sure you add your items to the network manager. So we're going to hit plus plus. We're going to drag the pet, and we're going to drag the mount up. You see, I made two before. This was the original. This was the study because it's been a long time. So now that we have these items here, I'm going to talk to the local hustler, make sure he's stocked up on these things. This is the sort of guy who got PlayStations in his trunk. Yes, I got him selling PlayStations. Not really PlayStations, but you know, that's just his hobby. Let's see, where's Big Sleazy? There you go. Cool thing about Yuma, and which is why I use it, with Yuma pets, Yuma monsters, Yuma characters, if you make some things and make some variants, you can make armor or whatever, and you could just pop them onto a character, and provided you set everything up properly, it'll allow you to basically add armor items or whatever you want onto a character, and it'll just save you a whole bunch of time making NPCs and such. Let's pray there's no errors today. Sometimes if there's an error or you move something out of game, you gotta delete the database. Oh goodness, not today. So just to let you know, this works in version 10. It worked in every version I've messed with so far, but I'm also gonna give it another go just to be perfectly sure. So oh, forgot to add the mounts to the mounts. You're gonna have to forgive me for this one. And we're adding the pets to the pets. There we go. Now he'll put up with us. We're gonna buy each one. This is the pet. What is he doing? Well, I'll get that resolved. Yeah, I don't know what this pet is doing. Well, I'll get that one fixed up. Oh yeah, I didn't this is an older model. This is the one where I found out I made a mistake. Well, instead of problem solving here, which will take a while to set up everything properly, because sometimes some things are a bit off, I'll show you the golem. This is the other pet that I set up, took some time. So to look at this controller, this is kind of cool. The pet options are set up the same. The only difference is the controller. The controller that's being used is called the Golem controller, and this is how it's set up. As you see, there's more conditions I forgot to add, but once you add them, they're good to go. Looks like I can only have one pet out at a time. I have no idea what that guy is doing. I'll sort it out. I've never had that happen before. Going back to this, the controller, you can see we have the in, the animation, which we set up here, and we have the out. On the attack, we have the in, the attack, and the out. Same thing works here. The in, attack, and out. Well, I'm not gonna let that bother me. I don't know why that bothers me. I have no idea where that guy is going. But this guy, he's a better behaved. No, hold on. That's pet. Huh. Oh. Well, this guy listens. So we're gonna go fight some things before I make this like a 40-minute video. Well, that's pretty much how it's set up at this point. Um, the logic and stuff, I have no idea where that starts. So I'm gonna have to dig around and figure out how that works. I don't know if we can put their skills on our bar to have them activated. All I see is this and this. So I do plan on taking the UI apart, sorry, the HUD apart and making a new HUD for it. I won't be releasing this since this is something for my project and it's in an unfinished state. It's a version 1 rough draft. So if there's any questions, leave the comments below or just find me in Discord and I'll be able to answer your questions. All right, guys, have a good one.